What is up, everyone? We got another UFC Fight Night card to break down from a Draftkings DFS perspective. This one coming in from UFC Mexico, and it's in Mexico City, which has an elevation of about 7,000 feet. And if you don't know, these high elevation cards, Salt Lake City, Denver, Mexico City, tend to have some weird things happen. Obviously, guys can gas out faster up at that elevation. We saw the Salt Lake City card. You had a lot of weird things happen, and this is no different. But one thing I will say is that the UFC did manage to only put lightweight weight classes and lower on this fight card, which is actually really good. So we won't see any heavyweights gassing out after 2 minutes. And with the lower weight classes, they usually have better cardio, better skill sets. So hopefully we don't get any fights that are too sloppy. Is all I'll say about that. Um, but yeah, let's get right into it. I'm gonna break down each of these fighters based on their salary, what kind of metrics they have, what kind of upside they have. And when I'm doing these breakdowns, I'm mainly just doing it from a salary perspective, not really accounting too much for ownership because I don't have ownership projections on me right now. I will take some guesses on ownership, but I can't really give good advice on that until I have the actual ownerships on Friday. Um, and the other thing is I'm mainly analyzing this from like a very high upside MME lottery type of position. So, what kind of plays are going to have the most upside when you're trying to win these huge tournaments, 100K to first, the throwdown, that kind of stuff. Um, Now, I will try to throw in some advice about what play might be better for this big lottery tournament versus what play might be better for a lower risk single entry or cash game type of build. But that's not my priority. My priority is to identify the best upside plays per the given salaries. So without further ado, let's start off with the first fight. We got Muhammad Naimov versus Eric Silva. And Naimov opened up at about minus 250, and he's now down to minus 600. I've heard a lot of people say, Naimov, he's not really proven in the UFC. He had a very close, controversial win versus Nathaniel Wood, and then lost the fight to Jimmy Malarkey, and then ended up catching him for a knockout. So I've heard all that talk, but once again, I usually just like to look at the lines and kind of just accept them for what they are. I don't really have a strong opinion on this fight either, so I'm just gonna assume that Naimov is a minus 600 favorite at 9.1K, which right off the bat, that's pretty good line value for this price. And then for his ITD line at 9.1K, he has a tiny bit of grappling upside, maybe. So maybe like minus 110 would be good. And I mean, yeah, he's minus 135. So yeah, Naimov is a good play. He just is. He's got line value, he's got finish upside, and he's got grappling upside. That's like the three golden things you're looking for in MMA DFS on DraftKings. So he's a good play. And I think he's good for all. He's good for cash games, good for single entry, he's good for all contest types as well, in my opinion. So, and then Eric Silva, he's like plus 600 ITD, plus like 450 to win. And seven, I mean, yeah, that's just no good. So pass on Silva for me. Then we got Victor Altamirano versus Felipe dos Santos. This is interesting. So we got two flyweights. Felipe dos Santos is coming off an impressive loss versus Manel Kopp. And this is typically what happens in MMA betting is when a fighter comes in and they're expected to get blown out or they're expected to get starched, and that doesn't happen, and they exceed the expectation, they're generally, they get a lot of credit for having a better loss than they were expected to. And that's kind of what I think is happening here. A lot of people, are just talking about Felipe dos Santos' last fight versus Manel Kopp, where he lost clearly, but yes, he did look better than people expected. So that's a little bit interesting. I usually find that these types of fighters are overvalued, but we'll take it as the line is what it is. He's about a 3-1 favorite at 9.2K, which is not bad. And then he's like plus 200. So like right off the bat, you can see Naimov is a way better play, better line value, better finishing, better grappling upside, all the things. So I imagine Dos Santos is going to be very low owned, but for good reason. And then Altamirano plus like 1,000 ITD, that's really no good. But what I will say is he's 7K, which is very low price. And in his decision wins, I don't know if you're getting like 80, 85 points, is that enough at 7K? Is that enough? I don't know. So I would say that this fight as a whole kind of looks like a pass, but it's Altamirano if anything for me, just because assuming they both score similarly in their decision wins, Altamirano 7K. So yeah, I think the fight looks like a fade in general, but Altamirano's side is definitely stronger in DFS. Then we got Luis Rodriguez, Bondar, which is about a pick'em fight. So let's go ahead and see if the salaries agree. So you're getting, a touch of line value on Rodriguez, only a tiny bit. In the ITDs, I'm looking for about plus 250 for both of them, somewhere around there. And plus 325, plus 2. So this fight's pretty fringy, to be honest. Bondar maybe has a tiny bit of grappling upside. Luis Rodriguez he's pretty low volume, so you're really relying on him to get the finish to hit his ceiling, in my opinion. So I think this fight just kind of looks like a pass, but I guess Rodriguez, if anything, but I think this fight is probably a fade for me. Okay, then we got Claudio Puelles versus Faris Ziam. So interesting fight. You got Claudio Puelles, who kind of fits the stereotypical bill of a jiu-jitsu nerd. And Ziam is kind of the guy that I'll say he's where fantasy points go to die. Um, so this fight off the bat is looking kind of sketchy to me. I imagine Puelles is going to have a good ITD line because his win condition is probably based around a submission. Yeah, by far his most likely path to victory. And if he does get the submission, he's probably going to have to get takedowns as well. So you can certainly argue that, without inserting your opinion on who wins, if Puelles wins, he probably does score well because he probably is finishing the fight and he's probably getting takedowns along the way. And then Ziam, like I said, he's where fantasy points go to die. 69, 46, 67. He did have a 96 in one fight. I just don't see it though. And let's take a look at the ITD lines real quick. So, okay, Ziam plus 210, that's not good, and Puelles plus 275 at 7.5K. That's not bad. His win look at this. His sub line is the same as his ITD line. So, as much as I hate to say it because I really don't like the jiu-jitsu nerd style, I don't like to watch it. I think it's okay. I'm not gonna get into my opinion on it too much. As much as I don't want to back Puelles, you just got it. Like in DFS, he just is a high upside play because of the way he rates to win if he does win. So, yeah, Puelles is a good play, and Ziam's a fade. Then you got the fight that I think is the easiest one to target on the slate. You got wow, okay, we got some line movement. So Chires is minus 525 right now. De Silva plus 400. And this fight, it's almost always going to end in the first round or early second round. So, I mean, one of these guys is scoring 100. It's hard to see this fight busting. You got Chira's minus 250 ITD, which is really strong. And okay, here's the thing about De Silva. Yes, there's been a ton of money that has come in against him, but his win condition in this fight, people have always said this, is he has 5 minutes to knock someone out, or he's going to gas out and get finished himself. And that's what's happened throughout his career. He's gotten knocked out and finished in all of his fights, but he's also had a lot of moments in those fights where he's been close. He was super close to finishing Vergara. He had 2 knockdowns, a takedown. So based on the line, I mean, he really is just not winning often enough. But if I'm going to take a punt at this price level, 6.9K, and people are even saying, right, like his win condition is 5 minutes to get a knockout. Because of the elevation, people are even saying that he has probably 2 minutes to get it done. So in his wins, if he's winning in the first 3 minutes or whatever, he's just going to, that's going to break a slate. If he wins this fight and puts up 110 with a first round KO, he's going to break the slate at 6.9K. So as bad as the metrics do seem, with how little he's winning, he's plus like 450. I'm still going to get some exposure to him because he has 110 point ceiling in his wins. So I guess maybe I'll match my exposure to his win odds, like maybe something like that. I don't want to get a lot of him, but I'm going to get to him just because he does have the upside that I'm looking for. Okay. So I think Chires is obviously an elite play, but De Silva in MME, I think you got to at least get, what is he winning the fight? Like at least 15%, I would say, honestly. So yeah, both sides, but definitely less of the De Silva side. Then we got Jesus Aguilar versus Mateus Mendonca. You're getting a little bit of line value on Aguilar. He is 7.8K and like plus 110. So a touch of line value there. He also has a bit of takedown upside. And Mendonca's, a finisher, in my opinion. So I think Mendonca's ITD line is, so Mendonca's a good play. He's got a good ITD line. And Aguilar plus 250. That's like okay, but combine that with the combine that with the grappling upside and just a little bit of line. I think both sides of this fight are good. I think this is a good fight to target. Then we got Quinones versus Ronnie Barcelos. So, no line value on this fight. And if you listen to breakdowns, a lot of people are going to say that Barcelos is old, he's over the hill, and Quinones is going to knock him out. And Barcelos is just, not a good fighter anymore. That's what you'll hear. But if you just look at the metrics, plus 150, 8.6K, that's in range. And the fact that he also has maybe a couple takedowns of grappling upside, I think Barcelos is in play. He's a good play. Maybe not good. He's in play is what I'll say. And then Quinones, like plus 210. So yeah, Quinones is a good play as well. So I think, you'll hear it's Quinones or pass, but just on the metrics from what I'm seeing, I think both sides of this fight are good. Then we got another fight that's just going to be a heavy target. You got two guys that are going to bang it out, and one of them is most likely to go down in round 1. And also, if Chris Duncan wins, he also could win in a grappling heavy late finish or decision win where he also scores pretty well. But Torres has a lot of line value here. That's one thing. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of line value at 8.3K. So here's what I'll say is that yes, he has the line value, but I don't think it matters as much in this matchup because okay, let's just look at it. So Torres, great line value, uh, great finish value. He's an elite play. He just is. But the thing is that because he's an elite play, he's got all the line value, all the finish upside. He's going to rate really well in optimizers. He's going to be really high owned. And so I would argue that Chris Duncan, he's plus 170. His win condition is basically a finish. And if not, he's probably going to win by a very grappling heavy decision. So, I mean, Duncan is almost the better play because everyone knows Torres is a good play. So everyone will just navigate to Torres. But Duncan in his wins also has the same amount of upside, in my opinion. So I think this is a really sneaky leverage spot. And what I like to call the sheets concept, or at least this is where I learned it from, is when you have a fighter that just is elite, like Torres, right? Good line value, good finish upside. If the other side of it is even okay, especially if it's good, which I think Chris Duncan is a good play on his own, then the other play is actually the elite play because of how much ownership that Torres is going to get. So all of that is just a way to say that I think both sides of this fight are very strong, but Duncan could be a key leverage spot this week, and definitely take a look at ownership because I do think this will be a case where Torres is a lot higher owned than Duncan. Okay, then we got Sam Hughes versus Yasmin Uruguay, and I mean plus 180 at 9.5K. That's just not going to do it for me. Plus, yeah, this fight's just a fade. Don't really need to do any real analysis there. Ricky Turcios versus Raul Rosas Jr. Interesting. So you got a tiny bit of line value on Ricky Turcios, actually, and he's 7.2K. And this guy operates at a very high pace. You can see, yeah, in his decision wins, he's put up 100 plus, 120 point upside in his decision wins, which is pretty crazy. So I think that combined with the line value, despite him probably having a bad ITD line, which he does, I think Turcios is kind of weirdly, I wasn't expecting this, but I think he's a good play. He just is. If he wins, he's probably going to put up a good amount of points. And then you have Rosas, who's I think 9K flat. Yep. And I've been going back and forth on this. So Rosas, I can completely see the outcome where Rosas goes in there and gets a takedown and gets control, gets the back, gets a submission in round one, scores 110. Like that's definitely in play. But I can also see because Tertius is a guy who gets taken down, but he scrambles really well. So if that's happening, you could see Raul Rosas just rack up like a ton of takedowns. Because like I said, Rosas is trying to get you down, trying to get your back, trying to control you. He's trying to do that, but it doesn't mean that he will be able to do that. And if Tercios is scrambling really well, even in a decision, you could get a monster score out of Rosas going that path. So right off the bat, I'm looking for minus 110. He's like plus 150, which is not good. But just the more and more I think of the actual fight environment, like the round one sub is in play. It just is. And then his decision where he racks up a ton of takedowns is in play. So because that's in his range of outcomes, I just think that you got to play Rosas despite him looking, bad line value, not great finishing odds. I think the metrics don't tell the whole story in this matchup. But yeah, Rosas is more of a GPP play. Like if you're going to cash, I mean Naimov, who has like similar metrics, but with way more win equity. See, like minus 575. I think Rosas is kind of sketchy in like a single entry or cash game type of contest, but in MME, definitely, just because he does have, those two outcomes I mentioned as a possibility. And he could outscore, the Naimovs and the Chires if those come to fruition. So I think both sides of this fight are actually really good. Despite I know a bunch of people don't think Tercios is going to win. I get it, but he has good line value. He has a good win condition with high pace. So give me both sides of that fight. Then we got Francisco Prado versus Daniel Zellhuber. Pretty efficiently lined fight. And we're looking for like plus 120 for Zellhuber. He's like plus 180, which is just not good. And then Prado, what is he, 7.3K? And he's like plus 330-ish. I think it's kind of it's fringy, but I guess it's in play in MME in like the big upside lottery tournaments. I think Prado is in play just because. I mean, you could also argue that Prado's win condition is a knockout. It just is. So yeah, I think that Prado's in play, and Zellhuber's like very fringy at best, and he's not a priority. But I don't know if he's really a fade either. I'm kind of undecided on Zellhuber, but Prado I think is in play. Okay, then we got the co-main, Yair Rodriguez versus Brian Ortega. Another hard fight to break, or not a hard fight to break down, but a hard fight to choose what I want to do with. So you got Yair, who's the far better striker, the far better kicker. And you got Ortega, who's going to march forward, heavy pressure, has really good chin. At least from what we've seen, he's very durable. I mean, you got intangibles in this fight too. You got Yair coming off a bad loss to Volk, and we've seen in the past a lot of these guys and girls, when they come off a bad title fight loss, their career can typically take a nosedive. We've definitely seen it in the past. And then on Brian Ortega's side, you have, he's coming off an injury. He's been out for God knows how long, I think 3-4 years. So you got a lot of unknowns coming into this fight, a lot of intangibles. But let's just go back to the metrics for starters. So Yair plus 180, Brian Ortega plus 200. So both of them on their own have pretty good finishing odds. And this is tough because if you think that Brian Ortega can get at least one takedown in this fight, which is probably likely, and if you think if he gets one takedown, he gets a submission, then I guess you play Ortega. But I just don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's as simple as Ortega gets one submission or one takedown and then he submits him. I don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's that binary. I think that Yair is going to make it hard for Ortega to take him down. Ortega does not really have good entries, doesn't really have a double leg. He just has a body lock against the fence. His takedowns are really not good. Then again, Yair's takedown defense is also not good. So I understand both sides of the argument, but my preferred side in this fight is definitely Yair. I think he can score well in a decision with a lot of volume. He can score well with a TKO, obviously. And I just think Ortega's way to win is way more opportunistic and way lower probability than Yair's win condition. So with all that being said, I understand the argument for both sides, but I'm probably not going to get much of Ortega, and I'm definitely going to get a good amount of Yair Rodriguez. Last but not least, we got the main event. Brendan Moreno, who's had a lot of money coming on him. He's now minus 300, which is a really healthy money line for 8,800. And he's got 5 rounds to work with, and he's got a high pace, and he's got grappling upside, and he's got finishing up. He's got all the things, okay? So he's a great play. but he's going to be, I can promise you he's going to be popular. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Yeah, good finishing. So yes, Brandon Moreno, I mean, it's no secret he's an elite play. You don't need me to analyze that to tell you that. And then Royval, I mean, I guess you could argue has a really high pace as well. And I mean, I think he put up 90 points in a loss his last fight. Let's take a look. Yeah, he put up 90 points in a loss, which is crazy. So I think Royval's in play. I mean, a bunch of people will say that Moreno's going to easily win this week, but the bottom line is Moreno's. I mean, obviously look at ownership, but Moreno's probably going to be very chalky, and depending on how low Royval is owned, I mean, if he wins, he's probably going to score well, right? He's probably going to either find an opportunistic. Let's see. I mean, he's probably going to find an opportunistic KO or submission somehow. I don't know how it's going to happen. I think it's low percentage, but it's MMA, and he's plus 250 to win. And when he wins, he's going to be a lot lower owned than Moreno, and he's probably going to score well. So I think Royval's in play, and especially in MME. But Moreno's obviously the elite side. But like I said, just because you have one elite side, everyone's going to see that. He's going to have a higher median projection because he has 5 rounds to work with. He has win equity, all that stuff. So you need to consider Royval for leverage, for sure. So, okay, I think that's it. Let's go ahead and go through each play again. Yasmin, I think, is a fade. Chires is 100 points waiting to happen, so he's a good play. Dos Santos is a fade. Naimov is a good play. Rosas is a good GPP MME play. I would probably stay away from him in single entry or cash games, though. Zellhuber is pretty fringy, maybe even a fade. I haven't decided yet. Moreno's an elite play. Ziam is where fantasy points go to die. He's not a good play. Barcelos, despite what you hear from everyone, I think he's a good play. Yair is a good play. Mendonca is a good play. Torres is an elite play. Bondar is probably a fade. Raul is fringy, but probably a fade. Duncan's an elite play. Aguilar's a good play. Ortega, I guess he's fine, but for me, I'm just probably not going to get to a lot of him. Quinones is a good play. Puelles, on paper, is a good play, but it just feels disgusting playing him. Royval, look at ownership is what I'll say for this, but I think he'll be a good play because I just think that Moreno's going to be super popular. Prado is a fringy MME type of play. Tercios, I think, is a pretty good underdog. Silva's a fade. Altamirano, once again, is, a pretty fringy underdog as well. Lacerda, MME, get to like 15%, I would say. And Hughes is a fade. So I hope that helped out a bit. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. If you have any opinions on the fights, any hot takes, please let me know. And best of luck to everyone this weekend. This should be a really fun card to watch, so I'm looking forward to that. And I hope, we have a good week in DFS because last week was kind of rough with no underdogs winning at all. But it's on to the next. So hope you guys have a great weekend, and best of luck to everyone.